Good afternoon, esteemed traders and investors. Today is Monday, May 25th. I present to your attention another market review for InstaForex. As always, I'm glad to be here with you today. So, we have a new trading week, and right from the start, a whole batch of trading ideas has already played out for us. For the pound, for the euro, for gold, for the euro dollar. By the way, even 2 trades. And that can't help but make us happy. Let's carefully examine the schedule of upcoming news events that are awaiting us this week. The economic calendar. Now let's set the filter by importance and select this week. And we'll see that there are no important news releases today. Well, except for the Consumer Confidence Index, which is only tomorrow on Tuesday. On Wednesday, the New Zealand interest rate decision. ECB press conference at 2000. That's pretty funny actually. On Wednesday, but maybe such a press conference happens after the rate decision. But for some reason, the rate decision isn't scheduled for Wednesday. Maybe something will change in the news calendar today. On Thursday, we have USGDP and initial jobless claims at the exact same second. By the way, the funny thing is, there's no news on the dollar on Friday. Let's take a look at what we can trade on the charts. Let's go. So, let's start with analysis. Gold. The gold analysis is pretty good because 2 trading ideas have played out. The first trading idea was a move up from this long breakout. The instrument broke through the top layer of the surface. On May 21st, we got an ABC structure, and the second trading idea I gave was from this breakdown. We went quite deep and it was incredibly risky, but there was no new low on May 21st, so ultimately this idea also worked out. Today, during the Asian session, what's interesting is that the significant price extreme recorded back on May 19th was not broken. And as a potential option, if they happen to give us some favorable entry prices, though most likely they won't, you can buy in from the breakdown on the long side, already aiming for a breakout of last week's extreme. If we switch over to the weekly time frame, you'll clearly see that this is the specific zone we've been hunting for since then. This is the highest point. You can see it clearly last week, a small spinning top, which indicates that the bears in gold are already tired and have stopped falling. Look, we were falling. Trying to fall. 1 week, then the second, third and fourth. A whole month the instrument has been staying in roughly the same zone. We broke through the extreme over 2, almost 3 weeks, and the instrument is likely to move higher. And everyone who is selling right now, believe me, there are quite a few of them. They will be forced to stop out just above this extreme point. I think they'll be taken out with a bang, and unfortunately you might get caught up in that too.
Looking for real trading advantages? InstaForex offers the lowest spreads and commissions. On major currency pairs, our conditions are better. Lower spreads and only $5 commission instead of $7. That's real savings for every trader. And now, let's get back to the market review.
Regarding the euro currency pair, the dollar also performed exactly according to our trading strategy, the ideas we discussed, and I won't go back to the screenshots here. I still went back to them because I'm an analyst. My words are one thing, but my actions are another. I shared a few trading ideas for the euro dollar, and a couple of those haven't even played out yet. There were 2 ideas, actually, and one of them involved 2 moves, 2 waves, and that can't help but make me happy. When on May 21st, I gave an idea for a drop after a short breakdown, and this one was for growth from this long position. In short, you really need to pay close attention to this point. Everything worked out by chance, and that's pretty cool. But before that, I should remind you that this long breakout didn't work out. And of course, that's unpleasant. But it did play out 1-to-1, just not at the level. They left the level and worked it out later, the next day. It happens. You can either live with it or try to deal with it somehow. Or you can simply increase your position size after such a trade, because levels will get broken sooner or later anyway. Analysis of the weekly time frames. It displays the same picture as with the euro dollar. It's a small weekly bar, a so-called spinning top after 2 weeks of decline, a kind of pause, and once again, all the short sellers will now be stopped out, exactly as we saw with gold, right behind last week's highs. And I think they'll get taken out, and it makes sense to continue working on the upside in this small midterm structure. As for any major, large-scale moves, let me remind you that overall, Despite that relatively short setup that we saw happened right here, in my purely unqualified, of course, personal opinion, they really should take out these ones. At the very least, looking back at last week, and then after some more time has passed, the movement should still continue to go downward. But technically speaking, of course, the most elegant and ideal scenario for us would be this one right here. A follow-through of the short breakdown from the week before last and further movement downward to update the quarterly lows. And that is pretty much how you would play it here, generally speaking. So, the overall trading idea is to expect a decline in the instrument's quotes into the zone, I'll show you now, of the July lows from last year. And unfortunately, such lows do exist and are quite realistic. So right now, in my opinion, we are in a corrective upward movement before a further move down. There's nothing unusual here. You can work both long and short positions. Moving on to the 15-minute chart, what's interesting here is that it's absolutely the same as with gold. Here, there is a naked break that happened today during the Asian session. We need to mark it with a toxic green color if we get a pullback. Pullback is a favorite word among Russian officials, and after testing this long break zone, we can expect a significant upward movement of the instrument towards the weekly extreme, which I just showed, 1.16.617. With stop losses, for example, set at Friday's close, you can make a profit here. The volatility is relatively minimal, of course, 200 to 400, and that represents a risk-to-reward ratio of 2 to 1. Pay attention to this simple trading idea. Well, and then, of course, there are other options. What are the options? We take off upward, looking much higher up on the chart. You can sell either from this initial short break or perhaps even higher. Here, of course, there is a clear downside for shorts. This is the primary short zone. And of course, it would be absolutely great to go down from here and never come back again. There is a famous song by the band Aria called Leave and Never Come Back. And that is exactly the situation we are looking at right here. They've established a base here, and I really don't like it. Ideally, the most ideal location to sell is this short selling zone, but right now we're currently a bit below it, switching to the pair.
I also want to remind you that every InstaForex client automatically receives loss insurance. For every $1 of compensation, only $4 of your friend's investments are required. Just submit a request, and your losses will be recovered. Let's continue with the review.
British pound, US dollar pair, pound dollar. And unfortunately, I also gave a trading idea for this one to go long. This was from the long break on the 15-minute chart, and as you can see, everything worked out as well. And by the way, the pound is notorious for leaving zones behind and then coming back to them. That's what happened on Friday, and it was already clear that this would be a breakout. And here, the trade was literally 200 for 500, almost a 1-to-1 risk-reward ratio. Now, moving on to the weekly setups, we're looking at the weekly charts now. Unlike the previous instruments we discussed, the British pound US dollar currency pair did not just simply stop at that specific level, it gave a small spinning top as well. A really nice inside bar that is just begging for a continuation. There was a sudden and frenzied surge in the price, so unlike the previous instruments, there are no specific zones on the pound like there are on the euro dollar. It just has a rather unclear trend. There are both short and long signals, so you could say the instrument is in a triangle pattern. But that is usually what the typical market analysts tend to suggest. However, I personally view the situation quite differently. I'm also interested in shorts here, but unlike the euro dollar, there are no targets, no zones below, but there is a strong, powerful initiative, and it's quite possible that we're at the test of a short breakdown. For example, let's say, even on the 15-minute chart, we could see a trend change to something like this. As an option, why not?
With InstaForex, you can triple your profit. For every $4 of your friend's investments, you automatically get an extra $1 added to your profit, with no extra conditions.
Looking at the dollar-Canadian dollar, the pair has been showing incredible growth on the weekly chart for 3 weeks in a row. The instrument is rising steadily, and the dollar is clearly strengthening here. But let me remind you, the dollar-Canadian dollar is not the dollar index, because here we have the Canadian dollar involved. And it's closely linked to the price of oil. And as you know, oil is behaving quite unpredictably right now, so you also need to be extra careful here if you want to effectively hedge your strong positions in the dollar. If you are working with some instruments to bet on the strengthening of the dollar, and with others you want to protect yourself against its weakening, you can do this with the dollar/Canadian dollar for the long term. Why do I believe this is the case? Because this whole story on the weekly time frame from 2023 all the way to 2026, I believe it's all a stretch and it should be wiped out by a fierce drop, a really fierce one, simply put. But all these minor periods of consolidation are just preparation for some significant movement that could happen very soon. That's why we need to closely monitor the development of short positions. But since we're still in a good corrective move, it's currently premature to consider entering any sell positions. In other words, we need to at least reach this specific target zone because the upper trading break has already been fully worked out. So right now, we have two distinct scenarios to consider. When the instrument gets here, a new wave of dollar weakening might begin, but for now, we don't see any strengthening.
We also have a great offer. Fund your account and get a 30% tradable bonus. Trade with additional capital and expand your opportunities with InstaForex.
Friends, InstaForex offers a free consultation with a personal trading consultant. Follow the link in the video description, fill out the callback form, and gain access to exclusive offers and special trading conditions. BRT plus for risk-free trading. That's all. Trade with InstaForex, subscribe to the channel, and stay tuned for new reviews.